Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm still waiting for a few more participants to join in. Uh, okay. So, this is Dr. Gaurav Deka. As you already know me, you've signed up for this class. And today we are going to discuss and talk about something called family constellations. These are also known as systemic constellation. This is also known as transgenerational therapy or transgenerational form of healing. So, what exactly do we mean by family constellation? Uh, I basically work with a process called regression therapy. In regression therapy, we go back in time to the origin of the issue, whatever issue a person might be dealing with, be it a disease, be it a family problem, be it a relationship problem. We go back in time to figure out the origin of that problem. Now, as I say in my previous videos as well, the origin can lie anywhere. It can lie in our childhood. It can lie in the womb, as in when the child is in the womb of the mother. It can even lie in a state of pure consciousness when the child is not in the womb. It can even lie in a past life, in a different previous lifetime. So, how does family constellation come in this transpersonal work? Uh, the word transpersonal means trans and personal. Trans means beyond, personal is the ego. That is something that is beyond me. And what is beyond me? Beyond me is, of course, my childhood, my teenagehood, maybe my adolescence, me being in my mother's womb, my family, as well as me in a past life. So there are various parts of me behind me which has contribute towards making me today. It has contributed towards making who I am as a personality today. How does family constellation come in? Well, family constellation come in uh, when I identify myself as a part of a larger group, which means I have remnants and I have parts of my mother and father, right? As a family. My father has a family, and my mother has a family as well behind them. So he will have his own set of parents and his brothers and sisters and siblings. She will have her own set of parents and brothers and sisters and siblings. Now, that goes back to the entire community from their own place. That might go back to an entire race to which may belong. That might go back to entire ethnicity that may belong. And even post that ethnicity might be an entire, a place that might be coming from, a region or a locality or a country, which means that I carry impressions of all of those things: my family, my race, my ethnicity, my community, and even the country where my ancestors might be coming from, which means I am not just me, I am also my ancestors. Even biologically, that is the case because when DNA replicates, then it brings in elements of mother and father, and they have brought elements from their parents, and they have brought elements from their parents, and so on and so forth. So I do not know, and you do not know whose elements and whose remnants in the DNA are you carrying. So that's about me being as a transpersonal entity, someone who is not just me, but someone who is also composed by various elements which are behind me. And therefore, my existence is not only limited to my life. My existence also expands into my family, into my system. What is a system? A system basically is one big whole composed of different parts. Family is also a system. There is mother, there is father, there is brother, there is uncle, there is grandfather, there is grandmother. So there are so many elements in the system because of which consciously and unconsciously contributes in making who you are today. Now, what exactly is a constellation? Constellation, as you know, in astronomy or in science, is a group of stars which are aligned in a certain way, put in a certain way, so as to form a structure. That's a constellation. Family is also like that. Every family will have members in it which will have roles. So, grandmother is of a different kind. She has a role. Grandfather is of a different kind. He has a role. Father is of a different kind. He also has a role, and mother also, of course, has a role. And these roles we see while we're growing up. Now, there is one part which we see and we absorb and we learn their behavior. For example, if father is dominating and mother is docile, our understanding of our primitive understanding of family system would be that okay, a male in the family looks like this and a female in the family looks like this. A male probably is hostile and aggressive, and a female might be benign and docile. Similarly, we may have impressions of our grandfather and our grandmother that, okay, older people in my father's generation are loving and caring, and older people in my mother's generation might be indifferent or might be cut off, depending on how they are. And that's our initial understanding of the entire family dynamics. But then, apart from this initial understanding of family dynamics, we have to understand that we are also carrying remnants of those people in our family lineage whom we have never met. We have never known them. These are our ancestors, and we don't know what kind of life they lived. However, even though we don't know what kind of life they lived, we are not free from whatever they experienced. In most of my videos on transgenerational therapy and epigenetics, epigenetics is the science which deals with percolation of experiences and behaviors and attitudes and personalities from different generation to your present generation, not just genetically, not just DNA, but also experiences as in traumas, accidents, abuse, traveling down from one generation to the next generation. That is epigenetics. So in many of my videos on transgenerational therapy, epigenetics, I have talked about how this percolation happened. And therefore, in my life, I might be living the fate, the experience, the trauma of an ancestor who I may not know about. So, for example, there was this girl who had come, a very young girl, who had a tendency for cutting herself. Now, when we tried to move into her childhood, as in what could be a trauma because of which she is cutting herself, cutting as in cutting the wrist, uh, we didn't know it. I mean, we couldn't figure it out that there are no trauma in childhood. There is nothing in childhood. Why is she doing that? And even she did not want to do it. And I asked her a strange question that could this be a possibility that you are not doing it, but someone else is doing it on your behalf? How do you feel when you cut yourself? And she says that, I feel so guilty of having done something that I feel that I should just cut myself. And uh, and then when we work with her later, I will talk about how we work, but let me just go to the inference of that work. So when we work with her later, we find out that one of her paternal uncles, I mean, she was not connected to it. One of her paternal uncle and paternal aunt, they were traveling, and the aunt was driving, because of which the car broke down, and the uncle smashed against the glass and totally cut himself. There were total lacerations on the body, and that's how he died. Now the aunt, she lived all her life in that depression of the fact that I should have been cut and I should have been killed that way. And she felt guilty all her life, and she died in depression. So, what happens then? The aunt, after dying, of course, remained a part of that lineage, part of that ancestry. And this girl, two generations later, oh, sorry, one generation later, um, she takes up the fate of that aunt. And that's how you borrow fate of an ancestor. It does not matter whether you knew that ancestor or not. So every time she cuts herself, she feels that I should have been cut. I feel guilty. So she has borrowed the fate. Now, theory says that every time there is something traumatic, some kind of secret, some accident, some neglect, some abuse that happens in some part of the generation, until it is fully resolved, it will come down, percolate down, and it will reflect itself, it will repeat itself somewhere else also. This particular client of mine was actually repeating a family trauma, a family guilt that went with the person totally unresolved until she came to therapy, until we went back in time and we figured out the whole family dynamics, and we understood that who is it, whose role are you playing. Now, that's what family constellation does, that it resolves a family trauma, it resolves a family secret, it resolves even a disease that might be just a representation of a family trauma. You know, another example is there is this man who had come with extreme suffocation in the chest, who had come with extreme suffocation in the chest, and there were multiple symptoms in his body. There was a lot of chest pain, and he was a non-smoker. There was a lot of chest pain, congestion. There was a lot of heaviness in the legs to the extent that there were varicose veins. And there was also a lot of weight gaining. And to the medical eye, this just looks as a disease, you know, gaining weight, varicose veins. Because of weight, might there be congestion and suffocation also because there's too much of weight around. So that's the medical reason. However, when we work through family constellation, I will again tell how it works. But when we worked through family constellation, we figured out that the man's 3 generations back, there were 6 to 7 people who had died of suffocation in a gas chamber. And all those ancestors, the trauma that the ancestors went through in the gas chamber, the suffocation, the heaviness, and the whole pushing down of things, the whole pushing down of life, breathlessness, all of those things um, were being experienced by my client in the form of a disease, as in the weight was pulling him down. There was varicose veins, which is there was a lot of gravity, as well as there was suffocation, inability to breathe, and the weight around was a pure reflection of the trauma of those 6 to 7 people who went through that gas chamber suffocation during that time. And he, of course, did not know. However, when we resolved it, he went back and he asked his father, grandfather, and he figured out that yes, there was such a tragedy. It had happened. There was some sort of blast in which these people were trapped and had died. Now, the idea is to understand that I belong to a system, and my problems are not just my problems. My problems extend into the system, and my problems could also be a reflection of the system's problem. Something has gone awry in the system, something has gone unequalized, something has moved out of harmony in the system, because of which I might also be carrying remnants of that. How do we do it? Now let's discuss about the process of family constellation, because a lot of people want to know how we do it. They know about transgenerational percolation and how it happens, but they also want to know how we do it and how we resolve. So how we do it is, for example, you are a client and you have come to me to resolve any issue. It could be a disease, it could be a family problem, it could be a relationship problem, it could be even be a symptom, it could be anything basically. And after you've come to me, maybe there is a group of people wherever we are meeting. So consider it's a big hall and there is a group of people. 4, 5, 6, 7 people are there. You do not know those people, they do not know you. I know them because, of course, they are going to play certain roles. These people are called participants or representatives in a family constellation. Now, what you will do is, I know your problem because you're my client, and therefore I will ask you, that um, of all these people there, mentally, silently, without they knowing, go up to them and give them roles. So you probably close your eyes and you give them the role. Okay, this person is going to play my father. Uh, that person is going to play my disease. This particular person is going to play my finances. That particular person is going to play my mother. This one is going to play the reason for which I'm suffering. So there could be multiple facets to the problem, right? And you give these participants representative roles to play those facets of your problem. Now, when you give them these roles, you are also asked as a client to set them up in a certain way. Whichever way you want to set them up, for example, you're placing one person here and placing the other person here and placing the other person here. Whichever way you want to set up, the therapist or the facilitator asks you to set up. Now, looking at the initial setting up, the way people are set up, looking at the initial setting up itself, you get an idea of, okay, what is going to happen, who is close to whom, and who is further away from whom, which one is facing which one else. You get an idea of the problem there itself. Now, what will happen is slowly and steadily in that group, you are sitting with the therapist or you are sitting with the facilitator. In that group, what will happen is all the people that you have given the roles, they will start behaving, acting, experiencing, expressing, and and moving just like the way you have given them the roles. In fact, many times they also replicate the behaviors and experiences of the people and the aspects about which they are representing, the ones that they are representing. So in that three-dimensional matrix that is going on, it's like a constellation, right? Because you're placing them in different positions and they are playing out those roles. And and in the three-dimensional matrix itself, what will happen is the diagnosis of the problem will come. First of all, you will get to know that what is the problem. And of course, it happens through the questioning of the facilitator. If I'm the facilitator, I will be questioning to those participants about how they are feeling and who they want to interact with. But slowly and steadily, as they go on behaving, experiencing, and expressing like the people that they are representing without knowing it, the diagnosis of the problem will be reached. And then we will get to know the crux of the problem, that in which generation, whatever happened, is it about ancestors? Is it something to do with father's lineage? Is it something to do with mother's lineage? Was there a crime in some generation which has not been resolved? Was there an abortion or a miscarriage which was kept as a secret? Was someone adopted in that family? Was someone not accepted in the family and ostracized? So all of these family secrets, traumas, as well as experiences which are undesirable, which keep on repeating in our lives as clients, will show up in that three-dimensional interplay of people. Now, you may ask me that how do these people know? How do they come to know that they are playing these roles and they are supposed to behave like that? So, family constellation theory also says that there is a knowing field of every person. There is a knowing field of each family. There is a knowing field that I may be having around me, and other people will also have around them. And when um, these participants come together and are representing an aspect of a client's life, they tap into the knowing field. It is also called the informing field, by the way. So they tap into the knowing field unknowingly, unconsciously. It's like connecting to the collective consciousness, or it's like connecting to the collective unconsciousness. But it happens in such a fluid way that you don't get to know about it, and it feels very, very strange in the beginning. But that's the magical part of the story, where people begin to play out roles by tapping into the knowing field. And well, one doesn't need prior practice to that. We have had participants who freshly came and they had no knowledge of constellation work, but when they participated, they found themselves changing into or playing out roles of different personalities. Now, as we diagnose the problem, we also understand that somewhere or the other, some uh, disbalance, some disharmony has happened in the family system. Whether it's one generation back, two generation back, seven generation back, whether it's a past life, wherever it is. The point is somewhere there is a disbalance in the entire matrix of the whole ancestral tree, family tree, or the whole genome. Now, what we do is, as facilitators, we now begin to shift the matrix. We begin to make this whole interaction of people in such a way that we harmonize the system. We bring an internal harmony in the system. We bring an internal homeostasis into the system, a stability into the system. So when we stabilize the interactions of these individual in the matrix, which is happening in front of the client's eyes because the client is sitting, the client also has an understanding that, okay, this is exactly the problem. And to resolve the issue, this is what needs to be done when the therapist harmonizes it. When the harmony happens here, the harmony also happens there, as in the real family, wherever they are, whatever is happening, because they are tapping into the knowing field and changing things in the energy circle, in the energy matrix. And therefore, the changes start happening there also. So it's not only the client or the client's problem that begins to shift, it's also the problems of the entire matrix, entire constellation, entire family that begins to shift. Now when the client sitting with the facilitator sees this new understanding and new image, which is the harmonious image, then the client accepts that and takes in this new image and understands that, okay, this is what needs to be done, this is what needs to happen. And slowly and steadily the shift starts happening even in the family matrix, in the family constellation as well. So that's about family constellation. To tell you about the history of family constellation, the founder of family constellation is someone called Bert Hellinger. Now, Bert Hellinger was a German priest, but he is also a psychotherapist. He should be around in his late 80s or maybe 90s right now, but he still teaches in Germany family constellation. And I conduct family constellation workshops, as in I invite people to come and resolve their issues through family constellation. And I also invite participants to take part, because even the participants who are participating and playing out roles by tapping into the knowing field uh, are not doing it randomly. It may feel that, okay, the client is giving a role to so and so and they are playing out that role. But I sincerely believe that it's not random. Sometimes it happens that a representative has played out the role of an inexpressive daughter under the dominion of a father. And even in that representative's life, that has been the story and that has been the learning. Sometimes there are women who are very dominating, and they have played the role of a dominating father in the matrix, in the constellation, and then they finally understood that, okay, where is my domination coming from? So you not only play someone else's role, but when you are playing that role, you are also resonating with that role unknowingly and unconsciously, and there is always an unconscious learning for yourself. So people at times go through these constellations and tell me that, I never knew that this role could be such a resonating role for me. It's exactly like who I really am, and now I understand that how it may really feel, to be that person or not to be that person, or to be on the other side. Many times dominating people have played the role of submissive people in a constellation, and they have understood that, okay, how my behavior could affect someone else in my family. So there is always a learning even for the participants, and not only for the client. The client, of course, has wisdom, insight, understanding, and this new harmonious image with which they go back. But even the participants have a lot to learn and a lot of insight about their own behavior, about their own self, and maybe their own family. So I welcome you all to ask me questions, and if you want to know more about family constellations, you can definitely ask. Is there any question? You can go ahead. If you have any questions, you can type, and I'll be ready to answer. I don't see any question being typed. It only means two things then. Either you have understood everything I have said or not understood anything that I have said. So fine. I look forward to all of your participation in our family constellation workshops that keep happening, not only, of course, as a client, but even as participants. And I hope that you have understood all. I will be coming up with more masterclasses on family constellation, systemic therapy, as well as transgenerational therapy. I know this is an extremely interesting area. Oh, someone has asked me a question. I'll come back to it. I know that this is an extremely interesting area, and therefore we will need to have more in-depth knowledge of this particular modality. Um, I understand that a part of this modality feels mystical or magical, but it makes complete sense when you experience it, because it's a completely experiential form of therapy and not something that we can just talk and explain. So going to Anubhuti Singh, question: do you close the ends for the participants? Yes, of course. We of course close the ends for the participants because they should be released from their roles. So they are released from the roles that they are playing. Sometimes, as a ritual, we turn them around and we tell them that, okay, now you tell your original name to yourself, whoever you are, and release that role. You are free from that role. In fact, the client comes up, and as they have given the roles to the representative, they also take back the role. What kind of problem can be solved? Oh, I spoke about it in the very beginning. Of course, any physical issue will have remnants of something that has been passed down the lineage. It may be a medical problem, it can even be a relationship issue, it can be a mental disorder, it can be an emotional disorder. Any and every problem, somewhere or the other, will have a transpersonal and transgenerational element to it. So we can use family constellation for that. You of course have to be in a neutral state to receive it. So many people cannot receive it because they are they just cannot take the reality which may come forward. For example, in my case, what happened is when I went through a constellation myself, I discovered that there was a sibling before me and there was a sibling after me who died. I'm not going into the problem, but when I figured that out, it was really overwhelming for me. And then I went ahead and I asked my parents that, is that true? And they said that, well, it's true. We never spoke about it because it was traumatic. So it's a traumatic secret which was kept in the lineage, but which kept playing out in some form in my life until I went ahead and I did the constellation and I released them and I paid my respect to them. So yes, any and every problem, somewhere or the other, will have a transpersonal as well as a transgenerational aspect to it. Next question. Okay, Kashika Gulati. This has really been informative. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kashika. Thank you. Thank you. So, well, then I am closing today's class here. And I hope to see you all maybe next week or very soon to go in depth into family constellation and transgenerational therapy. See you all then. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, there's a last question. Hanshika, if the client is highly resistant, will it affect the process? Well, it may not, because the client may be carrying elements of someone else in the family lineage. If the client is resistant, it may happen that that particular trauma is not supposed to be resolved, which means time hasn't come for it to be resolved. Or the resistance of solving it could also belong to that particular ancestor who doesn't want it to get resolved. So the answer to this question is yes as well as no. Only when we do the process, we'll probably get to know. There are cases where clients have walked out of the whole session thinking that, okay, this is all, this doesn't make sense, it is a mess. So yeah, that is also a form of resistance. Yeah, there are more questions. Um, wow, it's really interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Kakoli. Siddhant Manocha just joined in. Anything in brief as a closing summary? Well, Siddhant, thank you for coming over. And what you can do is, I'm going to put this up on public as well, this masterclass. So later on, and I'll share the link with you. You can have a view later on as well. This will be saved. Okay. Thank you so much then. Bye bye. Take care. See you next week or sometime soon on another masterclass on family constellations. Thank you.